When the storm is inside, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. The Buddha, there is a place within you no storm can reach. Not the chaos of your deadlines, not the betrayals that scarred your trust, not even the gnawing ache of emptiness that visits in the silence of night. There is a place that remains untouched, still, ancient, unbothered by thoughts, and yet somehow you've forgotten it. You suffer not because life is cruel, but because your mind has become too loud to hear your own stillness. Zen does not offer beliefs, it does not demand rituals. It simply asks, can you be silent long enough to hear what's always been there? A student once came to the master and said, my thoughts won't stop. I cannot sleep. I cannot breathe without feeling pain. The master poured tea into a cup until it spilled. The student exclaimed, it's overflowing. The master said, like your mind. That was the teaching. No scripture, no ceremony, just one overflowing cup that mirrored a noisy life. You think peace is something to earn or achieve, but peace doesn't arrive when you control life. It arrives when you stop resisting it. What if the noise you hear isn't coming from the world, but from your mind, telling you stories that aren't even yours? The doubts that say you're not enough, the fears that predict failure before you begin, the regrets replaying scenes of a past you cannot fix. They echo, they loop, but they are not real. And yet you believe them. You obey your thoughts like commands. You bow to your doubts like they are truth. You flee from silence as if it could harm you. But Zen stories don't comfort your ego, they destroy it. One story tells of a monk who lived alone in the mountains. Travelers would climb hours just to ask him questions. One asked, how do I find peace? The monk pointed to the stream and said, do you hear the water? The man nodded. Enter that. There was no explanation, no guidance, just the sound of water and an invitation. Because the truth cannot be spoken, it can only be experienced. You have been trained to think your way out of pain, but not all wounds can be solved by thought. Some must be surrendered to stillness. You keep searching for answers, not realizing that the act of searching is what hides them. Your thoughts do not need more thinking, they need space. You've tried to chase peace through success. You've tried to find stillness by moving faster. But peace is not found in movement. It waits in the pause between everything you've been rushing past. Zen doesn't tell you to escape your life. It asks you to show up for it fully, quietly, and without judgment. A master was once asked, what is the way? He replied, ordinary mind is the way. The student pressed on, but how do I reach it? The master answered, if you try to reach it, you move further away. That response isn't meant to confuse. It's meant to awaken something ancient in you, the knowing that striving blinds you to what's already here. The harder you try to be still, the more noise you create. The more you chase freedom, the more you run in circles. The mind that seeks stillness is already not still. So you stop, not out of failure, but out of recognition. You see the futility of effort, and in that seeing you awaken. You stop searching, you stop clinging, you stop asking the world to fill a space that was never empty. Zen does not fix you. It reveals that you were never broken. You are not lost, you are buried. Buried under years of identity noise and the stories of who you were told to become. You've mistaken your thinking for yourself. You've mistaken the storm in your head for the world outside. But beneath the chaos, there is only clarity. Zen stories exist to break the spell, not with loud truth, but with quiet presence. When the mind is clear, joy follows like a shadow that never leaves. The Dhammapada. You don't need more advice, you need less distraction. You don't need to hear more voices, you need to meet the silence behind them. You've been taught that peace is found by adding something to your life. Zen teaches that peace is found by subtracting. In one story, a student asked, what is enlightenment? The master raised one finger. No speech, no chant, no wisdom words, just a single finger, and everything was understood. The answer was never the point, the moment was. Zen invites you to notice what is always present but never seen this moment. this breath, this stillness you've been too busy to feel. You don't need a cave in the mountains. You don't need a robe or a mantra. You need only to return to the witness, the part of you that sees without reacting, hears without judging, exists without wanting. That is where peace lives. Not in the future, not after you improve, but here, now, in this breath. You've been chasing the moon when all along its reflection was in the still water of your own mind. Beneath the noise, beneath the seeking, beneath the striving, there is a silent invitation, and it has always waited for you to be quiet enough to hear it. Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. The Buddha. You want peace, you want stillness, but you also want to keep chasing them, and so you miss them. The moment you begin to seek peace, it slips away, not because peace is far, but because the act of seeking creates distance. The one who searches is already declaring lack. The one who waits for quiet is already making noise. In Zen, this contradiction is not a problem. It is the point. A student once asked his master, "If I meditate 10 hours a day, how long until I reach enlightenment?" The master answered, 10 years. The student, ambitious, said, "What if I meditate 20 hours a day?" The master replied, "Then 20 years. The student was confused. Why longer? Because the more you try, the more you get in your own way. The mind cannot reach silence through effort. Stillness is not achieved by adding, it appears when you stop. It's like muddy water. The more you stir it, the cloudier it becomes. Let it settle and clarity returns on its own. That clarity isn't something you earn. It's what you return to when all striving falls away. You cannot force a flower to bloom. You can only create the conditions for it to unfold. In the same way, you cannot force the mind to be still. You can only step aside and let the stillness emerge. There is a deeper error we all fall into. We confuse silence with the absence of thought. We think that to be quiet is to be empty. But the silence Zen speaks of is not dead. It's alive, vivid, penetrating. It sees without reacting. It listens without needing to reply. It is awareness awake but unattached. To understand everything is to forgive everything. The Buddha. You believe your pain is caused by others, their words, their mistakes, their betrayals. But the deeper truth is this: your suffering is not caused by what happens. It is caused by how your mind clings to what happens. You are not harmed by the arrow. You are harmed by pulling it out again and again and replaying the wound. Zen doesn't erase pain. It makes you conscious of your grip on it. When you let go of the story, the pain has nowhere to live. A monk once carried a woman across a river. Though his order forbade contact with women, he helped her across safely. Another monk walking beside him said nothing until hours later. Then he whispered, "You shouldn't have touched her." The monk smiled, "I put her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This is the quiet power of Zen. It turns your gaze inward, not to shame, but to free you from what you didn't know you were still holding. And you are holding so much. Old conversations, unspoken expectations, invisible fears. You've built a house inside your mind and filled it with voices that don't belong to you. Some are parents, some are critics, some are your own voice distorted by years of striving and survival. But who are you without them? That's the question Zen doesn't answer. It leaves the question burning until the false self dies in its own fire. A master once held up a mirror and said, "This is your true teacher." Not because the reflection is who you are, but because it shows you what you are not. You are not the face, you are not the mask. You are the watcher, the space behind the mirror. You've mistaken movement for progress. You've mistaken thinking for intelligence. You've mistaken control for peace. But the deeper part of you knows. There's a stillness you've touched in rare moments after crying, after surrendering, after giving up the fight. In those moments, something opens. You stop chasing. You stop speaking. You stop seeking. And in the pause, you find what was waiting all along. The Zen master does not teach you anything new. He strips away what never belonged. That's why Zen stories feel strange. They're not trying to fill your mind. They're trying to collapse it. A man asked a Zen master, "What is truth?" The master slapped him. In that moment, the man awakened not because of the slap, but because his thinking was interrupted. The mind cracked open and pure awareness flooded in. Pain didn't awaken him. Presence did. He was pulled out of thought and into now. You've had moments like this. Moments when life shocked you into awareness. When words failed and only being remained. Maybe it was loss. Maybe beauty. Maybe stillness so pure time dissolved. That was not an accident, it was reality peeking through the veil. Zen stories live in that veil. They don't decorate your mind. They tear holes in it so the light can enter. Enlightenment is when a wave realizes it is the ocean. Thich Nhat Hanh. You think you are a wave separate, crashing alone. But you are water. You are part of something vast and silent, something that needs no name. Peace is not something you achieve. It is what remains when you stop pretending to be separate from the moment. Everything you are searching for is already here. Not in the future, not in another identity, but in the space you're avoiding with all your thoughts. You don't need to go anywhere. You only need to sit, breathe, and watch. And when you truly watch, you begin to remember the stillness that never left you. The mirror has no opinion. If you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? Dogen. You don't need another place. You don't need another title. You don't need to become anything more than what you already are when you are not pretending. But pretending is the great disease. You pretend to be certain when you are afraid. You pretend to be wise while clinging to ideas you've never tested. You pretend to be happy while dying from comparison. Zen does not attack your illusions. It holds up a mirror so still that you can finally see you've been looking through smoke. That mirror does not flatter. It does not argue. It simply reflects with no opinion, and that is its power. The world has always told you what to be. But silence asks a different question. Who are you without the voices? Not the one who's good, not the one who's broken, not even the one who's trying to heal. You without effort. You without story. You before you were taught to want. A student once asked the master, "How do I let go of my ego?" The master said, "Who is asking?" In that one line, the illusion collapsed. Because ego is not a thing. It is a thought believed in for so long it built a prison around the soul. But the walls were made of paper, and silence is fire. All conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. The Dhammapada. You suffer not because things are impermanent, but because you expect them not to be. You want love that never fades, peace that never shakes, success that never slips. But the very act of clinging creates fear, and fear is the enemy of stillness. Zen does not tell you to stop loving or achieving or dreaming. It asks only that you hold these things like water open-handed, because when you grasp, you spill. In one story, a man ran into the forest in panic, convinced a tiger was chasing him. He fell off a cliff and grabbed a vine dangling for his life. Above, the tiger growled. Below, sharp rocks waited. Then he saw a strawberry growing beside the vine. He plucked it and said, "How sweet." That is Zen. It does not wait for perfect safety. It blooms in the middle of danger and doubt. It says this moment right now is enough. You've spent your life running from cliffs, avoiding pain, chasing safety through control. But what you truly want is not control. It's surrender. Not surrender as weakness. Surrender as freedom. Because peace is not the absence of problems. It is the absence of resistance to what is. You've been told to fight for happiness, to strive for clarity, to build a version of yourself that finally deserves rest. But what if rest comes first? What if stillness is not a reward but a birthright, and you've been standing outside your own door asking for permission to enter? Zen does not grant access to peace. It shows you you were never locked out. The mind keeps making noise because it believes it must do something to be valuable. But existence doesn't need effort to be real. The tree grows without knowing how. The moon reflects without trying to shine. And you too can live without performance. You can speak without proving, walk without chasing, sit without solving. This is the art of being, and you've been missing it by trying so hard to become. Another student once asked, "How do I attain Zen?" The master said, "Can you hear the sound of that stream?" "Yes," the student replied. "Enter that." No explanation, no method. Just the invitation to merge with the moment so deeply that separation dissolves. Not merge with thought, not with analysis, with the sound, the now, the simple flowing truth of presence. This is not mysticism. This is you before the layers. Let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Rest. Tilopa. Rest is not laziness, it is returning to your natural state. The problem is not that you feel too much, it's that you've stopped listening to the silence beneath feeling. You keep adjusting the surface when the shift must happen underground. The stories you repeat are not you. The roles you play are not you. They are weather passing through a sky that never changes. And you still unshaken are that sky. The world will continue shouting. Your ego will keep whispering, but there will come a moment quiet unnoticed where something inside you stops reacting. And in that moment, you'll remember, you are not the noise, you are the awareness watching it come and go. The mind wants you to solve the moment. Zen invites you to be the moment. No path, no destination. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But the journey to yourself begins by not stepping anywhere. Zen saying, you've spent your whole life walking towards something, a goal, a better version of yourself, a dream just beyond reach. But not once did you ask who is walking and where are they going. The idea that you must move to arrive is the illusion. In Zen, the path disappears the moment you stop seeking it. The truth is not at the end of the road. It's under your feet now, in this breath you're barely noticing. A man asked a Zen master, "What should I do to find enlightenment?" The master replied, "Nothing." The man was stunned. "But I've been meditating for 10 years. The master said, "Then stop meditating. Because even meditation, when clung to, becomes noise. Stillness is not a method. Stillness is what remains when method ends. You've been polishing a mirror that was never dirty, trying to awaken a self that was never asleep, only distracted. You chase clarity like someone chasing their own shadow. The faster you run, the darker it follows. But what happens when you stop? The shadow stops too. And for the first time you see the sun behind you. You've mistaken effort for worth, discipline for identity. Even your suffering has become something you cling to because without it, you don't know who you are. But Zen has no interest in your story. It doesn't heal your wound. It shows you the one who feels wounded is not the real you. A monk once said, "The way to Zen is like a finger pointing to the moon. If you look at the finger, you miss the moon." Most people never stop looking at the finger. They get lost in the teachings. Obsessed with right posture, confused by words, rituals, robes, mantras, and all the while the moon shines quietly above them, untouched, unhidden. That moon is your awareness, not something you gain, something you realize has been shining since before your name was spoken. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Heart Sutra. You look at a rock and call it solid, but it is mostly space. You look at your identity and call it real, but it is mostly thought. What you see as reality is a projection layer upon layer of meaning placed by your mind onto what simply is. You don't see a tree. You see tree as you've been told it should be old, wise, still. But the tree doesn't know it's a tree. It simply is. And so are you. You've been wearing masks so long you've forgotten your own skin. The role of the achiever, the thinker, the victim, the teacher, the healer, the one who pretends not to care, the one who needs to be right. But underneath each is just silence, stillness, space. The more you try to be someone, the more you lose what it means to just be. A monk once held up a bowl and dropped it. It shattered on the floor. The student gasped, "Why did you do that?" The master replied, "Because even the perfect form must break." That moment was the lesson. Nothing you build. Identity, belief, control can last forever. But what you are beneath it all does not age, does not crumble, does not end. It cannot be harmed because it is not made of anything. You've been fighting to protect something that only exists in your imagination. Let it go. Let go of the version of you that always needs to fix. Let go of the you that needs a reason to rest. Let go of the illusion that arrival lies ahead. Zen is not about becoming awakened. It's about remembering you were never asleep. You fell into a dream of self. And like a dream, it felt real until now. There is nothing to fix, only something to see. Stop thinking, and there is nothing you will not understand. Seng-san, your thoughts are loud because you keep feeding them. You feed them with attention. You feed them with belief. You feed them with the fear of letting go. But thought is not the enemy. It is simply a tool like fire. Warm when used wisely, destructive when clung to. To quiet the mind, you don't battle thought. You witness it. You let it pass like clouds drifting across the sky. You don't chase the clouds. You don't fight them. You don't ask them to change. You let them float by, and in doing so, you realize you are the sky, not the weather. Everything else is temporary. This stillness behind it all, this witnessing it, is not temporary. It is your nature. When the Zen master bows, he bows to that nature not as a ritual, but as a remembrance. The real you has never been anxious, never been ashamed, never been incomplete. Those are garments the mind wears, not truths of the soul. You are not here to add layers. You are here to remove them until nothing remains but what cannot be removed. And what remains is enough, the space between thoughts. When you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Zen proverb. You were not born with a restless mind. It was given to you, built over time. A mind taught to compare, to chase, to cling, taught that it is only safe when it is in control. And so it runs constantly, not because it is evil, because it is afraid. But the fear itself is learned. At the center of your being there is no fear, only space. Thoughts come and go like birds crossing a sky they do not belong to. The problem isn't the birds. The problem is when you follow them. Your attention, once captured, forgets it is the sky. It becomes the flight, the movement, the noise. But what happens when you stop following? You begin to notice something that was there all along, the space between thoughts. A Zen master once said enlightenment is the gap between two thoughts. Not the thought, not the insight, the gap. That moment of pure awareness, untouched by language, not leaning forward or backward, just being. This is not something to achieve. It's something to uncover beneath the layers of meaning you've built on top of reality. The problem isn't that you think. The problem is that you believe everything you think. You mistake opinion for truth, emotion for identity, and memory for reality. But none of it lasts. And Zen is the deep invitation to stop anchoring yourself to what disappears. Let your mind become clear, like still water. The Buddha, still water, reflects everything without holding it. It does not cling to what passes over it. It does not distort what it sees. It simply rests, and in resting, it reveals. You too can become still, but not by force, not by command. Stillness is not the result of will. It is the result of surrender. In a famous story, a monk was sweeping the floor of the temple when a young disciple asked, "Why are you cleaning when everything is empty?" The monk replied, "Though nothing is real, dust still gathers." That's how the mind works. Even when you know the world is impermanent, distractions still rise. Thoughts still gather. Old emotions resurface. But that doesn't mean something is wrong. It only means you are alive. Zen is not about suppressing the dust. It's about sweeping without resistance. You breathe, you clean, you sit, you return. And that returning again and again is the pathless path. You are not trying to escape thought. You are learning to relate to it without attachment. You are learning to sit with the storm without being carried by it. And the more you return to stillness, the more you begin to notice. The thoughts become quieter, not because they vanished, but because you stopped feeding them. The master doesn't silence the mind. He simply stops mistaking it for himself. Another student once asked, "Master, why don't you speak of truth more directly?" The master replied, "If I spoke directly, you would miss it. Because truth cannot be said. It can only be seen. And the seeing only comes when you stop looking with the eyes of thought." This is why Zen stories feel strange. They don't explain, they point. And if you follow the finger too long, you miss the moon. The moon is this awareness without effort, awareness without clinging, awareness that neither wants nor rejects, just watches. You have touched it before, in the breath after a long cry, in the silence of a sunrise, in the stillness that remains after letting go. It was not created, it was revealed, and you did not reach it, you remembered it. When the mind is still, the universe surrenders. Ancient saying. You've tried to conquer the world by becoming more successful, more spiritual, more wise. But what if the real power is becoming less reactive, less opinionated, less grasping? What if the one who stops striving receives everything? This is what Zen reveals. The more space you give to the moment, the more the moment gives back. But you can't demand it. You can't manipulate peace to arrive. Peace comes when it is welcomed, not summoned. It arrives quietly like a bird on your shoulder. If you chase it, it flies. But if you sit still, it lands. So now you sit, you watch, you breathe, and without realizing it, something inside you begins to open like a window you didn't know was sealed shut. And through it, light enters, not a new light, the original one, the one you carried before memory, before your name, before you were taught to fix yourself. It was never gone, only hidden. And now you begin to see the sound of one thought dying. To study Buddhism is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. Dogen, you think you're looking for peace, but what you're really searching for is release. Not from the world, not from suffering, but from the idea of you who suffers. The identity that clings, the one that needs to succeed, the one who fears being seen and not being enough, sometimes both at once. That identity isn't who you are, it's a mask that hardened over time, a mask you forgot you were wearing. And Zen does not gently remove it, it breaks it. Because the awakening you long for does not come with comfort. It comes with clarity so sharp it can cut through the illusion of self. In one Zen story, a student begged the master for the final truth. The master looked at him and said, "Who is asking?" The student went silent. For the first time, he didn't know. That was the beginning of freedom. The more clearly you see that the you defend is a collection of habits, memories, wounds, and labels, the more lightly you hold it. And in that loosening, space is born. In that space, silence breathes, and in that silence you return. Return not to a better version of yourself, but to what has never needed versioning. No snowflake ever falls in the wrong place. Zen proverb. Your life has not gone off course. Even your detours have been part of the way. Even the broken chapters brought you closer to stillness. Because every heartbreak, every failure, every loss, it all softened you. Each one tore a hole in your armor, and through those cracks, light got in. So what are you holding on to now? What belief is gripping your throat in silence? What memory is still whispering that you're not worthy? What expectation is still writing the story of who you must become? Let it go. Not because it's wrong, but because it's heavy. You were never meant to carry so much. Another student came to a master full of frustration. "I cannot let go of my thoughts," he said. The master told him to bring all of them to tomorrow's lesson in a bag. Confused, the student arrived the next day empty-handed. The master smiled. "Where are your thoughts?" The student replied, "They're gone." "Exactly," said the master. "You cannot hold what does not belong to you." Thoughts come and go. They visit, they scream, they plead, but they do not stay unless you invite them. And even then, they are still guests. You are not the thoughts. You are the house they visit. And the house does not become dirty because a bird flies through it. Awareness is the greatest agent for change. Buddhist insight: nothing changes until you see clearly, and nothing needs to change once you do. The habit of the mind is to fix. The power of awareness is to see. Seeing is enough. See the thought and don't grab it. See the fear and don't explain it. See the grasping and let it unravel on its own. The mind doesn't like this. It wants action, control, answers. But Zen invites you to sit where the questions dissolve, where the answer is not a sentence but a silence, where the teacher is not a person but the space between two breaths. Have you ever noticed how everything quiets when you stop trying to understand? That moment when you rest inside your body and stop climbing through your head is the doorway. A monk once asked, "What is the path?" The master replied, "Open your hand." That was it. You've clenched for so long trying to hold to grip to shape reality into your image. But the hand that grasps is tense. The hand that opens is at peace. So open. Let the thoughts pass through. Let the fear rise and fall. Let the moment be what it is without your commentary. And in that radical allowing, the mind will quiet. Not because it is forced to, but because it no longer has an audience. Enlightenment is intimacy with all things. Dogen, you thought awakening meant detachment. You thought peace required escape. But Zen says stay, feel everything, resist nothing. To be intimate with all things means you bow to what is: grief, joy, silence, chaos, not as enemy, but as teacher. And every moment becomes the temple. Not later, not when you're ready. Now. The floor beneath you is sacred. The breath you're taking is enough. The confusion you're in is the next opening. This moment is not a distraction from your path. It is the path. You do not need to run. You do not need to change. You need only to become so still that you finally hear the sound of one thought dying, and in its place, silence breathing. You, without edges, without striving, without fear. Just this. No one awakens, and that is freedom. When walking, walk. When eating, eat. Zen saying, you have always tried to do more than one thing at once. Even in silence, your mind races. Even in rest, you reach. But what happens when you stop dividing? When you walk, just walk. When you eat, just eat. When you breathe, just breathe with no goal. Then a strange thing occurs. Reality sharpens. The colors are clearer. The body softens, and the moment begins to feel like enough. It always was. You were simply never in it. You lived beside it, thinking about it, analyzing it, missing it, while calling that living. But the moment doesn't need to be analyzed. It needs to be entered. A master was once asked, what is the secret to Zen? He replied, attention. Attention to what the student asked. Attention to attention. This is not wordplay. This is the way. To observe without naming, to witness without clinging, to be so deeply present that even the observer dissolves, until what remains is not a person being aware, but awareness itself without center, without division. Do not seek the truth, only cease to cherish opinions. Sengcan, the world is full of people shouting their truths, defending their ideas, fighting for their version of the way. But Zen doesn't argue. It doesn't need to be right. It doesn't need to be better. It simply returns to the root direct seeing. No concept, no system, just this as it is. You don't need more opinions. You need fewer filters. You don't need stronger beliefs. You need emptier hands. Because the one who carries nothing walks freely. A student once said, I am afraid of death. The master asked, which self will die? The student paused. The master smiled. Find the one who fears, and you will find no one there. Zen doesn't give you new answers. It strips away the questioner. And in that stripping, freedom is found not in knowing, but in being nothing in particular. No name, no history, no image to defend. Just clear presence. like a mirror that reflects but never holds, like a flame that warms but does not cling, like water that flows but does not resist. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Zen proverb. You imagined awakening would be fireworks. That peace would arrive with light and sound and transformation. But Zen says nothing changes. You still chop wood, you still carry water, you still face the same world. But the one who does it is no longer searching. The grasping ends, the resistance drops, and every act becomes full because it is not performed to become something else. You no longer act from lack. You act from stillness. You no longer speak to prove. You speak when there is something real to say or not at all. And in this, a deep and undisturbed peace arises, not the kind that comes and goes, but the kind that no longer depends on what comes or goes. This peace has no opposite, because it is not made of circumstance, it is made of your original nature. The quieter you become, the more you are able to hear. Rumi. There are voices in you still, old stories, past names, echoes of a world that told you who to be. But now you begin to hear beneath them the deeper silence, not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of truth. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply waits for you to stop speaking long enough to remember, and the remembering is not loud. It is the subtle shift that happens when you no longer ask the moment to be different. A monk once said the greatest miracle is to walk on earth, not to walk on water, not to float in air, but to truly walk. With attention, with breath, with reverence. What if this life, just as it is, was already the miracle? What if your breath was sacred, your steps holy, your silence perfect? What if you stopped trying to change the moment and instead became one with it? Then you wouldn't need a path, because you would see you are already home, and no one awakens, because there was never anyone asleep, only a dream of separation. And now you begin to wake. The moment needs nothing from you. Nothing ever goes away until it teaches us what we need to know. Pema Chodron. You are always trying to escape something. The discomfort in your body, the silence in your room, the thought you don't want to hear, the truth you're not ready to face. So you move, you scroll, you speak, you fix. But the things you try to escape are not the enemy. They are the invitation. Zen does not ask you to escape pain. It asks you to sit with it, to let it unfold, to meet it not as a threat, but as a teacher. There is no growth without discomfort, and no peace without presence in discomfort. The master once said pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Suffering begins the moment you say this should not be happening. But Zen asks, what if it should? What if the ache, the stillness, the uncertainty are not obstacles but gateways? You have tried everything to make the moment serve your preference. Now try nothing. Let the moment be as it is and meet it with stillness. Not because you've given up, but because you've given into reality unresisted. As long as you seek for something, you will get the shadow of reality and not reality itself. Shunryu Suzuki. You keep chasing spiritual experiences, a vision, a feeling, a breakthrough. But the moment you chase, you create distance. Zen is not about getting, it is about emptying until there is no you left to seek. In the absence of the seeker, what is left? Only this, only now, only awareness without commentary. A student once asked, what should I do when I feel lost? The master said, be lost. Not try to fix it, not try to escape it. Feel it fully without running, because even lostness, when fully entered, reveals a path. Even fear, when not resisted, turns into energy. Even silence, when not feared, becomes sacred. To know the self is to forget the self. Dogen, you have spent your life building a self, a personality, a role, a name with memories stacked behind it like armor. But who are you without the name? Who are you when no one is watching? That question is not meant to be answered. It is meant to dissolve the questioner. Zen stories don't tell you who you are. They give you nothing to hold on to so that you fall into what cannot be held. The self is not wrong. It's just not necessary in every moment. You can put it down, like a bag you've carried too long, like a role you've outgrown. And when you do, you realize you've been heavy for no reason. Stillness is not something you add to life. It is what remains when you stop performing. A monk once said, "Before I understood Zen, I saw mountains as mountains and rivers as rivers. While I studied, I saw mountains as not mountains and rivers as not rivers. But once I understood, I saw mountains again as mountains, rivers as rivers." This is the cycle of perception. At first, we see the world, then we see illusion, then we return to the world, but with new eyes. The mountains do not change, but the one who sees them does. And now, when you walk through your life, you begin to walk in it. No longer separate, no longer waiting for a future that redeems the present. No longer needing to name every feeling, explain every moment. Just walking, just seeing, just being. This moment is all there is. Rumi, you've heard this before, but have you truly felt it? Not as a thought, not as an idea, but as a lived experience, the raw intensity of now. No past, no future, just breath, stillness, aliveness, right here. The moment doesn't ask for your judgment. It doesn't require your interpretation. It only asks for your presence. And when you give it that, the war inside your mind begins to fade. Because the moment needs nothing from you. It doesn't ask you to be better. It doesn't demand enlightenment. It doesn't even care if you understand. It just is, and you just are. And that is enough. You cannot push the river. Trying to control the future is like trying to take the wind into your fists. Zen proverb. You've been taught to take control. Plan your steps. Think ahead. Shape your destiny. But Zen whispers something radical. You are not in control. And strangely, that is liberation. Because the river flows with or without your approval. The current does not ask your permission. The water does not check your preferences. It moves and carries and nourishes, and it does so without effort. You suffer not because life is chaotic. You suffer because you believe it should obey your mind. But the river doesn't obey. It bends, it floods, it disappears and reappears. And the more you fight it, the more exhausted you become. A monk once asked his master, "How do I flow with life?" The master replied, "Let go of the bank. You've been clinging to certainty, to roles, to old beliefs, to fixed outcomes that never truly existed. But the longer you hold the riverbank, the more you strain against your own nature, because deep down you don't want control, you want trust, you want to rest. Not by stopping the river, but by remembering you are the river. All things change. Nothing is permanent. The Buddha, this includes your joy, your pain, your identity, your purpose. Everything shifts like clouds in a vast sky, but the sky does not resist the clouds. It does not grieve when they leave. It holds nothing, and in that emptiness it holds everything. Can you do the same? Can you let go of what must leave? Can you stop trying to freeze the moment you love? Can you let the season pass without chasing it into winter? Zen is not about apathy, it's about intimacy without attachment. You feel everything, but don't try to trap any of it. You live fully, but don't cling to what life gives you. That's the difference between suffering and stillness. Stillness isn't numb, it's clear. It's being so present that you no longer need to control what comes next. You simply meet it as it is, without demand. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. Sang Tsan, you think you know what peace should feel like. You think you'll recognize freedom when it arrives. But Zen says, drop the expectation. Because even your idea of peace may be what's keeping you restless. You imagine peace as soft, quiet, beautiful. But sometimes peace arrives in chaos when you stop resisting what's chaotic. Sometimes it comes wrapped in grief when you finally surrender to mourning. Sometimes it comes in the form of complete failure when you no longer fear falling. Let go of what peace should be and notice what peace already is. It may be in the breath you just ignored. It may be in the silence between two thoughts. It may be here already waiting for you to stop chasing something better. Only when you have no thing in your mind and no mind in things are you vacant and spiritual. Zen saying, you've filled your mind with content. Ideas, plans, doctrines, philosophies, strategies for self-improvement. But what if the next step isn't addition, but subtraction? Remove the noise, remove the judgment, remove the effort to be anyone at all. Then what remains? Not a void, but a fullness that needs no explanation. Not nothing, but everything in its clearest form. Zen is not emptiness as absence. Zen is emptiness as openness. You are no longer cluttered by mental debris. You are spacious enough to contain the world without being weighed down by it. A master once held up a cup and asked, "Is it empty or full?" The student answered, "It is empty." The master smiled, "Then it is ready." What if your tiredness came not from doing too much, but from holding too tightly? What if your weariness isn't from life's weight, but from refusing to let it move through you? You cannot push the river. You can only float. And in floating, there is effortlessness. And in effortlessness, there is peace. Let yourself be carried not away but inward, to that place where nothing is lacking, where the current and the stillness are the same, where you are no longer the one surviving life, but the one who is simply finally fully alive. Nothing to add nothing to become the way is not in the sky. The way is in the heart. The Buddha. You have spent years collecting wisdom, books, quotes, courses, practices, and yet the stillness you seek keeps retreating like a shadow that flees your grasp. You believe that one more teaching will finally quiet the noise, that one more ritual will complete you, that one more insight will lift you above the weight of being human. But Zen has no interest in what you can add. It doesn't decorate the self, it dissolves it. It doesn't refine the ego, it removes the need for one. You think you are walking toward truth, but Zen gently reveals you've never left it. You've only layered noise on top of it, until the silence couldn't be heard. When you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Zen proverb. You keep thinking something is missing. Time, clarity, confidence, peace. But the deeper truth is harder to accept. It's not that something is missing, it's that you've believed the lie that you are incomplete. And because you believe it, you seek from lack. But the seeking only deepens the illusion. In one Zen story, a student asked his master, "How do I find the Buddha?" The master replied, "Lose the one who's asking." That's the paradox. The one who wants to awaken is the only obstacle to awakening. Not because effort is bad, but because effort assumes there is a self that must earn what is already present. You are not climbing a spiritual ladder. You are removing the dust from a mirror until you remember that your face was never gone, just hidden. If you want to get to the truth, let all opinions go. Seng-san, even your spiritual identity can become a cage. The one who meditates, the one who heals, the one who teaches, the one who seeks high vibration and avoids negativity. These are just quieter masks. They are lighter than the masks of ego and greed, but they are still masks. Zen removes even these. Until you are not someone on a path, you are the path itself. No image to defend, no position to protect, no destination to reach. Just the vast living simplicity of now. Great doubt, great awakening. Zen saying. Zen is not about certainty. It's not about spiritual confidence or cosmic answers. It begins where your certainty dies, where your ideas fail, where the last concept dissolves into silence. Only then is the mind empty enough to hear. Only then is the heart soft enough to receive. You don't awaken by building a tower of wisdom. You awaken when the structure falls and you realize you are not buried under the rubble, you are the space it falls into. A student once asked, "What is the truth?" The master said, "Not two." The student asked, "What does that mean?" The master replied, "If you ask, you've already made two." Awakening is not knowing something. It's becoming so quiet that the split between self and moment disappears. Then there is no self, no moment, no split, only this. You are the sky. Everything else, it's just the weather. Pema Chodron. You don't need to chase the clouds of thought anymore. You don't need to explain the storm. You don't need to make the sun stay. You are the sky, untouched, unbroken, always here. And when you remember that everything changes, but nothing changes, you still walk, still work, still feel joy, still feel pain, but the one who resists it is gone. And in their place is a stillness so vast it can hold everything without needing to hold on to anything. The illusion of two, to see things as they are, is to be free from fear. Zen wisdom. You've spent your life naming things. This is good, this is bad, this is who I am, this is what I am not. But the moment you name, you separate. The moment you judge, you fragment. And so suffering begins not from the thing itself, but from your relationship to it. Zen asks something daring. Can you see without naming? Can you sit with anger and not call it wrong? Can you meet grief and not call it weakness? Can you notice a thought and not become it? In a quiet temple, a student once told his master, "I keep having bad thoughts." The master replied, "Then don't keep them." There was no lecture, no explanation, just the recognition that thoughts are not chains. They are wind unless you hold them. You are not the wind, you are the sky. No self, no problem. Zen saying, the mind doesn't want to hear this. It wants to be the hero. It wants to be healed. It wants to triumph and awaken and transcend. But what if the deepest peace comes not from healing the self, but from seeing there never was one? A wave appears on the surface of the ocean. For a moment it looks separate, but the moment you call it a wave, you forget it's only water. So it is with you. You think of yourself as an individual experience, a name, a face, a timeline. But underneath all of it, you are not the wave. You are ocean, the whole, unseparated, unwounded, unbound. This is why Zen feels like death to the ego, because the ego feeds on identity. And Zen quietly whispers, there is no fixed identity. There is only flow. There is only now. There is only what appears and then disappears like breath on a mirror. When you walk, the whole universe walks with you. Zen poem. You are not separate from the tree outside your window, not separate from the stranger on the train, not separate from the thought that passes through your head. The idea of separation is a trick of language. Your mind speaks in nouns, but reality flows like a verb. Not I am walking, just walking. Not I see the flower, just seeing. Not I love, just love. Remove the I and everything softens. Not because the self is bad, but because when the self steps aside, life becomes visible again. In one Zen teaching, a student asked, what is the self? The master said, a dream the mind tells itself. Then what wakes from the dream, the student asked. The master said, not what, who? And even that dissolves. Words cannot capture this. They can only circle around it like stars orbiting a sun they can never touch. But in silence, you know. Not mentally, viscerally. That deep, still knowing without language, that is Zen. The mind creates the abyss. The heart crosses it. Nisargadatta Maharaj. You feel far from peace, but that distance was imagined, like a traveler who walks for years only to find the treasure was buried beneath his own home. You've traveled far through ambition, through knowledge, through failure, through longing, and now you return to this moment, to this breath, to this life you kept calling ordinary until you noticed it was holy, not because it changed, but because your gaze became soft enough to see it. The flower was always sacred, the sky always vast, the silence always kind. You just forgot because you were searching. But now the search ends. Not with a prize, not with applause, but with your bare feet touching the earth and your lungs full of nothing but presence. And it is enough. The extraordinary in the ordinary. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Zen proverb. You've been waiting for something. A sign, a revelation, a moment that finally feels spiritual. But what if you've missed it? Not because it wasn't there, but because it was too close. Zen points not to heaven, but to your hands. Not to the sky, but to the steam rising from your morning tea. Not to visions, but to the soft sound of footsteps on your floor. This is the path. This moment, plain small unnoticed, is the doorway. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And if your mind is loud, you'll miss it. But if your attention is soft, suddenly even the ordinary becomes radiant. The Zen master does not stare at the stars in longing. He bows to the dust on his windowsill. He drinks his tea slowly. He hears the bird without naming it. He bows not to gods, but to the act of bowing itself. Because everything is sacred once you stop demanding that it prove itself. When the mind is still, everything becomes a teacher. Buddhist teaching. In stillness, the cup teaches patience. The leaf teaches impermanence. The silence teaches presence. Even your pain becomes a wise companion when you stop labeling it as enemy. A student once said, "Master, I want to find peace." The master handed him a broom and said, "Sweep the garden." "But it's already clean," the student replied. "Then sweep until you see the garden," the master said. This is the heart of Zen. Not cleaning for the result, but cleaning to arrive. Not acting for progress, but acting as presence. Not meditating to become peaceful, but meditating to meet the moment whatever it holds. Each day is a journey, and the journey itself is home. Matsuo Basho, you've been waiting to arrive, to succeed, to overcome, to finally feel like you're living the life you imagined. But life is not waiting for you to catch up. It's here, now, in progress, fully happening. And if you miss this moment, you've missed the whole thing. Because there is no final chapter, no perfect version of you waiting at the end. Just this unfolding, just this breath. Can you made it? Not with ambition, but with wonder. The way a child watches a raindrop fall. The way the wind touches your skin without effort. The way a bell rings once and then nothing. Not because it needs more sound, but because it was enough. When walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. But above all, don't wobble. Master Yunmen. Wobbling is the state of never fully being anywhere. Half in the future, half in the past, never whole in the now. But when you truly walk, you stop wobbling. When you truly breathe, you stop escaping. And when you fully give yourself to the most ordinary act, the veil lifts. And what you thought was simple becomes profound. The bowl, the hands, the fire, the silence. They speak without words. They ask for nothing. They just are. And that is what you've been searching for all along. Not more, not higher, just here. Alive, unfolding, unfiltered. The end of resistance is the beginning of peace. If you want to escape suffering, stop running from your experience. Zen teaching. Most of your suffering has not come from pain itself, but from fighting it. From labeling it, judging it, planning your escape from it. But Zen teaches something radically soft. You don't have to run. What if pain, when not resisted, changes shape? What if sadness, when fully allowed, becomes quiet compassion? What if discomfort, when not fought, becomes presence? It is not the event that wounds you. It is the story your mind tells about it. It is your refusal to let life be exactly what it is. A student once told the master, "I feel lost." The master said, "Then let yourself be lost." "But I don't want to be," the student replied. The master smiled. "That is the only problem. When you let go of what you are, you become what you might be." Lao Tzu. You've been holding on so tightly to the idea of who you are, to what should happen next, to how life should unfold. But clinging is heavy. You try to hold the wind. You try to freeze a moment. You try to make peace something permanent. But Zen reminds you everything is passing, and peace comes not by holding, but by releasing. Let go of needing to feel peaceful, and suddenly peace begins. Let go of needing clarity, and space opens. Let go of needing a lesson, and truth arrives wordless. You don't need to understand what is happening. You only need to allow it, to breathe with it, to be still enough to stop interfering. Because reality, when left alone, has its own intelligence. Nothing is more important than this moment. Thich Nhat Hanh. The future you're trying to control doesn't exist. The past you keep replaying cannot be fixed. The only place you ever meet life is now. But now feels too simple for the mind. It wants a plan, a goal, a grand transformation. Zen is the death of that addiction. The end of better, the end of someday. The return to exactly what is without needing it to be more. In one story, a monk sat for days in silence. A traveler asked him, "What are you doing?" The monk replied, "Being." "But what are you achieving?" The monk smiled exactly. "Let go or be dragged." Zen saying, you've felt it before. The tightness in your chest, the clenching of your jaw, the tension of holding what wants to leave. It could be a thought, an identity, a plan. But the tighter you grip, the more it hurts. Not because it's wrong, but because it's not meant to be held. You were designed to flow, not freeze, to feel, not control, to respond, not resist. So let go. Let go of the image you're defending. Let go of the future you've overplanned. Let go of the idea that this moment must feel a certain way. And watch what happens. Suddenly the weight softens. Suddenly the silence feels like presence instead of absence. Suddenly you are no longer waiting, you are here. Sitting quietly doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. Zen saying, you are not responsible for the growth, only for the stillness that allows it. You are not the one who brings peace. You are the space where peace lands when the noise fades. Trust that the garden grows, that the healing happens, that the breath returns. Not because you make it happen, but because you stop getting in the way. No effort, no tension, no control. Just the quiet miracle of surrender. And in surrender, there is rest. And in rest, there is peace. And in peace, there is the end of the war you didn't realize you were fighting. The breath you've been running from feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor, Thich Nhat Hanh. Your breath has always been with you. Through heartbreak, through laughter, through failure, through joy, through everything you've ever lived. And yet you rarely notice it, because the mind is faster, the ego is louder, the world is distracting. But breath is patient. It does not demand attention. It simply waits, always ready to bring you home. Zen returns again and again to the breath, not as a technique, but as a remembrance. This inhale, this exhale, this moment of being alive, not as a thought, but as a fact. Nothing spiritual needs to be added. Nothing profound needs to be found. Because your breath is the temple, and every return to it is a bow. Inhale the present. Exhale the past. Zen mantra. When the breath deepens, the mind begins to dissolve, not through force, but through stillness. A master once asked his student, "Where is your breath?" The student replied, "Here." "Good," the master said. "Then you are not lost." That was the entire lesson. Because when you lose your breath, you lose your center. And when you return to it, you return to what cannot be shaken. Your breath is your mirror. When it's shallow, so are you. When it's rushed, so is your perception. When it's full, steady, and quiet, you begin to remember who you are underneath the noise. And who you are is not the noise. Awareness of breathing is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Buddhist teaching, you don't need more guidance. You need to sit with your own lungs. To feel the air rise without control. To let the exhale carry something out of you that's been waiting to leave. Fear, tension, past self. Let it all go on the breath. And with each cycle, return again. Not to something new, but to something ancient, simple, and undeniable. You are here, you are breathing, and that is enough. The student once asked, "What is the most important part of meditation?" The master replied, "The moment before you begin thinking. It is that sliver of space, that first breath before the mind wakes up and grabs the steering wheel. Stay there. Stay longer. Stay so long that the thoughts grow tired of waiting for you to return. Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." The Buddha. You've lived so much of your life ahead of yourself. Chasing next, worrying about later, trying to build a bridge to some imagined better. But the breath does not live in tomorrow. It only exists now. And the more you anchor into it, the more grounded everything becomes. You realize you've spent years holding tension in your shoulders for no reason, holding your jaw tight for conversations that never came, holding your breath because you forgot you didn't need permission to relax. Zen does not arrive through effort. It arises when you return to the body, when you feel the ribs rise, the belly soften, the air enter without judgment. That breath is not just oxygen. It is presence. It is peace unwrapped. It is truth with no language. It is you with no story. And when you follow it, you arrive fully, finally, quietly. Right here, a single breath fully felt is the end of illusion. Zen teaching. You may not find peace in books. You may not find it in rituals. You may not even find it in words like these, but you will find it in your next breath if you pay attention. Because the breath is not trying to teach you anything. It's just trying to be. And in being, it reveals the most sacred truth Zen can offer, that this moment, unmodified, undistorted, and unchased, is already complete. You were always home. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. Rumi. Everything you were looking for has always been with you, but you searched for it with the wrong tools. You searched with thought, with identity, with desire. And what you were looking for, peace, presence, awakening, has no shape for the mind to grasp. It cannot be chased. It cannot be captured, because it was never somewhere else. It was only ever this moment, this breath, this ordinary now that you kept stepping over, convinced that something more meaningful must be coming. Zen whispers nothing more meaningful is coming, because nothing could ever be more complete than this simple being, unclothed, unnamed, unresisted. The mind makes a good servant, but a terrible master. Zen teaching. Your mind tried to lead you. It tried to build you into someone better, tried to fix your flaws, tried to get somewhere. But now you see the truth. You are not a problem. You do not need fixing. You were not broken, only busy. Busy thinking, busy reaching, busy becoming. And in that effort to be something, you missed the truth of being no thing at all. A monk once told a student, when I stopped trying to improve myself, I discovered I was never lacking. This is not the mind's idea of freedom. This is freedom beyond the mind. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, no one to be. Zen mantra. This is the core of Zen. Not a doctrine, not a solution, just the invitation to stop completely, to stop chasing, to stop defending, to stop pretending. And in that stopping, something extraordinary happens. Life returns. The bird outside your window is no longer a sound. To ignore it becomes your teacher. The silence in the room is no longer empty. It is alive with presence. Your breath is no longer background noise. It is a miracle. Not because the world changed, because you stopped needing it to. The true miracle is not walking on water or in the air, but walking on the earth. Thich Nhat Hanh. The miracle is this: you are alive, here, now, and you don't need anything else. Not enlightenment, not perfection, not answers. You only need to see clearly what already is. The cup in your hand, the sound of your heart, the breeze on your skin. No drama, no climax, just truth, pure and direct. Zen does not make your life extraordinary. It shows you that it always was. Don't seek the truth. Just stop cherishing opinions. Sengtsan. The truth cannot be owned. The moment you say, I have it, it vanishes. But if you stop clinging, stop judging, stop dividing, the truth appears on its own. Like water that clears when left undisturbed. Like a bell that rings when struck with no agenda. You don't become awakened. You stop being asleep. You don't reach the path's end. You realize there never was a path, only step after step, always right where you are. A final story. A monk asked his master, what happens when we die? The master said, I don't know. The monk was startled. But you are a Zen master. The master smiled, yes, but not a dead one. This is the essence. No need to know, no need to control. Just show up fully, with humor, with humility, with presence. Wherever you are, be there totally. Eckhart Tolle. You've reached the end of the search. Not because you found the answer, but because you stopped asking the wrong questions. You no longer ask, what should I become? You ask, can I be fully here? Can I drink this tea with no story? Can I listen to the rain without remembering or hoping? Can I let this moment be the teacher, the path, the home? You can. You already are. And now there is no more to seek, no more to say, no more to change. Only this: silence, breath, stillness, being, and in that, peace.